What's up, Chumbags? Welcome to the HQ. You're listening to the Respawn Station podcast. My name is Nick Sivak, and I'm joined, as always, by Sri Kandula.
Yep. Yes, can do. I am here.
Today, we have another episode of this beautiful podcast for you. I didn't really know what to say there, so that's what came out.
What adjective would you think of when describing our podcast?
We got another
Beautiful.
big episode for you. We're going to be talking about the games we've been playing like usual. We're going to be talking about some news like usual, like Ghost of Yote that got a little PlayStation State of Play deep dive. Going to be talking about some drama with Subnautica 2 and publisher Crafton. And we're going to be talking about, you and I, we play a lot of games, Sri. Sometimes it's really hard to pick what to play and when. So we thought we'd maybe have a little bit of a conversation specifically about that and talking about how we come to decide on what we're playing. So should be fun, but as always, we like to start it off by asking each other what we've been playing. So Sri, take it away. What has been taking up your mind share this week?
Well, earlier, right before we started, the artificial banter, we started. I had said that I was just set deck this episode, and those of you who not in the business, that means set decoration, okay? And honestly, as you were doing the intro, I realized, oh no, that is correct, because I've only been playing 2 games. The first one is Death Stranding 2, which honestly I have not been playing a lot of. I only played like 3 hours since last time. The only thing I have to say about that game since the last time that we did it, since I talked about it, was that the director of RRR, SS Rajamouli, is in the game. And it is so bizarre to me, the context that like someone my parents know is now in a video game, that I can be like, hey, look, like this guy, like I sent him actually a video, like it's like a 10-second clip from me playing it of Rajamouli in the game, and I was like, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. The other one is a big fat redacted. I've probably played about 10 hours of this game, so it's the most, like makes up the significant amount of my playtime this week, but I cannot talk about it until next week. So
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, people gotta wait to see what I think about this particular game. If you couldn't figure it out, the hint is that it comes out at the end of July, when the embargo lifts. But that being said, I will quickly shout out, Nick has an interview that he did with Jacob Sismalek, I think is how you say it. But he's the writer of The Witcher 3, Cyberpunk 2077, undoubtedly one of the, like out there interviews we've had in terms of like, how did we land that interview? But we did. And so if you want to check that out, Nick had some great questions. I helped a little bit as well, and I think together it definitely makes for the longest interview that we've done on Respawn Station. And so it was interesting, kind of getting a little bit of insight into that process. And then also, part of that was that part of why Jacob was doing the interview was that he has a new book out now called Inner Space. I think it was actually originally released in Poland already, but then now it's getting translated to English worldwide for a full release. And so I have actually been reading the book. I'm about 100 pages in, which is not a lot of progress considering I had it for like 2 weeks, but it's been a busy. Look, this game that I can't tell you about has been really taking up a lot of time for me. Okay, but I from what I have read, it's a very interesting book in terms of just like the general setup. It's primarily takes place on the ISS, and the idea is that like something goes wrong. It's not like a a weird kind of like out there type of thing. It's tries to be as like grounded and real as possible in its science fiction, but it's like a hypothetical like, oh, you're on the ISS and then something starts happening, and like then how do the tensions between countries and people kind of get stressed. And the thing I will say as a writer is, man, it is technically so descript about the ISS that I'm like, am I like learning stuff by reading this? Like, it's like I was understanding some of the intricacies of how the ISS functions in terms of like how it's cooled and stuff like. Anyway, long story short, it's very interesting and it's available now if you're interested in reading it. Because it's definitely worth it if you're into like good sci-fi. Like, I mean, I know that Nick has previously read Project Hail Mary and said that's a really good one, or The Martian, also by the same author. So yeah, check that out. But no, Nick, that's honestly it, man. I don't have anything else. I know you have some two quite juicy things to get into, so I'll
Yeah.
let you take it away. What have you been playing?
Yeah, so I have now finished playing The Altars.
Woo!
Yes, it's been a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be, but not necessarily in a bad way. Like I didn't feel like it overstayed its welcome. I feel like it was pretty good. It was a pretty good pace. It took me about, I think, 28 hours was my final run time to hit credits.
Okay.
And yeah, I am in the process of writing a review, so there will be a written review on respawnstation.com for people to take a gander at, take a read. But to give kind of like the abridged thoughts, I think The Altars really kind of surprised me in the experience that it gave. I had seen like a couple trailers here and there prior to release, and outside of you mentioning that the team worked on, This War of Mine and Frostpunk, I was like, okay, so probably some like management stuff and, some tough choices, I would assume, based on my knowledge of those games.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is definitely present in The Altars. But it's also just so many other things like I've described in the last couple episodes, where you have this third person like exploration and kind of resource gathering phase of the gameplay. You have this like background narrative of, a corporation trying to rescue you, but you're also in this very unique situation where you have these clones, and it's not necessarily the most legal thing that, you cloning yourself, it's not the most legal thing that you did. So
Yeah.
it's it has a very interesting narrative full of, mysteries and intrigue, and at the same time, it's also very kind of dynamic and based on player choices, because as you're going along, as I came to learn, there's a list of altars that you can create throughout the game, but you can't create all of them in one playthrough. There is a fixed amount that the game stops you at, and there's other altars that I wasn't able to experience. So depending on the characters that you decide to create into the world, that can change little sub-stories and the overall story. Because there's one big moment that I'm not going to spoil that does kind of involve the crew. And so it kind of depends how, who you brought along with you essentially throughout the journey.
You assembled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then also the game does have multiple endings as well. So based on choices that you make throughout the game, you can get a different ending as well. And then it also
Did you get a good one?
I felt like my ending fit for the character that I was playing as Jan. Kind of the choices that I was making, it felt like that was a natural conclusion and one that I found satisfying.
Sure.
I messed up one aspect where I was essentially, not to spoil anything, one of the altars came up to me towards like the very end and had a special request that I wanted to enact, but didn't realize that I had to talk to them before going to a different room of the base to initiate the end of the game. So it basically was just like, oh, I wish you would have made this choice that I was intending on making but didn't actually make. So
Sure.
there's one little thing that I kind of fumbled there at the end. But yeah, it's I was satisfied with the ending, and kind of as I alluded to throughout the game as I've been playing it, like I think a lot of the kind of questions that it asks and the general like intrigue of the story, I think is pretty gripping throughout the entire runtime. Anytime that there's like a significant issue that pops up, it like has a lot of different angles that you have to think about, and like it just, the situation is crafted in such a way where like the narrative really does kind of feed into the gameplay and vice versa. The gameplay really feeds into the narrative choices that you're making. So I think that was really cool about it. The other aspect is the kind of management systems that we were talking about. So like building and upgrading the bases, and trying to manage your alters, make sure that they're not getting like too burnt out or too angry with what you're doing, listening to them, trying to, you know, sometimes they come to you with like a little side quest, and it's like, okay, so now I need to find time to try to, you know, do this thing for you that clearly means a lot to you. So we have to take resources from our main mission and try to balance this stuff. And that's where a lot of the stress comes in that I've alluded to in the past, where it's like, okay, so, you know, I'll use the first main area as an example that I talked about. There's this giant chasm that we need to cross with a lava river. We can't just roll over it. We can't go around it. The sun's coming. What do we do? Okay, we need to build a bridge. Well, how do we build a bridge? We need to research these, you know, special gravity spikes that we can put into the ground to build the bridge. So then we need to go get the resources to make the bridge. And, oh, this person over here, he came in and said that he doesn't want to work, so we need to, you know, sidetrack all of this, take a day, and just focus on this issue to try to get everybody back up to speed. So it gets very stressful, but at the same time, once I got the hang of how the systems kind of interact with each other, it became a lot more manageable. And, you know, you really can't get away with putting things off. It's like you kind of need to start tackling things as soon as they land on your plate, and if you want to be able to have enough time to get what you need done in the allotted time before you get vaporized by space radiation. So yeah, if there's anything that I have really complaints about with the game, there was like a couple of like technical hiccups. Nothing too crazy, like I didn't have any crashes or anything like that, but there's just kind of like I was playing on performance mode, I should say, so favored frame rate versus visuals. But even still, there's like some weird artifacts, like when you're moving fast, where like it's the same kind of like stuff that you might be familiar with other game engines, where it's like, you know, like a little like halo of weird light artifact around your character. Like the hair sometimes doesn't look that great. This isn't really like a technical issue, but due to the scale of the project, they kind of reuse character animations for all of the alters. And so like at a certain point, like they're kind of aligned with different emotions that they're expressing. So you'll see like a lot of like this kind of thing where it's just like they follow the same kind of like facial movements and like hand gestures and stuff. So that's just something that kind of stands out. And there's like a couple areas in the environment, like typically movement is handled pretty well, but there's like a couple of spots where like rocks are positioned in such a way where you get kind of stuck on it and like kind of have to like back up and like find the actual path that lets you move and things. So there's like little technical hiccups like that. But again, like they're very minor and didn't really impact much of the enjoyment in the game. It's just like little things that I noticed throughout the course of the game. Frame rate was pretty solid, but like when you're trying to do actions really quickly, sometimes it, you know, chugs and hitches a little bit, but by and large it was not too bad. And yeah, it's a very interesting game. It's a very unique kind of game in how it blends a bunch of different genres. I thought the narrative landed pretty well. I thought the gameplay was fun. It, you know, once I got past that initial run where like everything fell apart and was on fire,
sometimes you need to fail, you know, to just learn how to, you know, get everything down and then go at it again.
Exactly. So yeah, I think it's definitely a cool game. Not a perfect game, not something that I would typically say is in my like wheelhouse, but one that I ended up walking away from pretty surprised and enjoyed quite a bit.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's one I've heard really good things about. So I'm glad you actually you liked it, especially because of the fact that it's like outside your genre wheelhouse. I mean, it's definitely outside of mine as well, but I think it's a good kind of live demo of kind of what we were talking about. Was it an episode ago, 2 episodes ago, where we're essentially talking about you know writing for games and writing about games, and it's like, yeah, no, one of the best things about it is that you'll find a lot of games that you would have otherwise not seen gotten the chance to play, and now here you go. Now you get that experience. So yeah, check out the Ultras. Again, it's out on everything, right? PlayStation, well, it's PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC as well. I don't know if it's coming to the Switch 2 or anything.
Yeah, not sure. But yeah, I would definitely give it like a thumbs up and a recommend without spoiling my score or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, you got to go to the respawnstation.com for that.
Yeah. The other game that I've been playing is one that I've been looking forward to for pretty much all year, or whenever we found out about it. I saw a comment, maybe it's only been like 3 months since it was announced, but Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4. I'm a big Tony Hawk fan, obviously, as older listeners may recall. To the point where I was looking back today, and I'm pretty sure in 2020, when Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 came out, that was my game of that year. Which I know that there was.
It's been 5 years since that first one. Wow.
Yeah.
It feels like it was just. Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but like I specifically the Neversoft era of Tony Hawk are some of the most fun games, I think, not just the extreme sports genre, but they're just some of the most fun games, period, for me. Like, it is the epitome of easy to pick up, hard to master, simple to the point gameplay, and it's that company, I think about it a lot, specifically with Call of Duty, with Tony Hawk, because they kind of had these eras. Before Tony Hawk, they had a couple of projects that they put out. Then they were primarily Tony Hawk for the longest time, and then they were primarily Guitar Hero for the longest time, ultimately ending at Call of Duty Ghosts, where then they were, folded into Infinity Ward, essentially, and Neversoft went away. But it's a company that had just such a distinct style and tone to their games. Not all of it aging the best, I will admit that. There is some stuff that, needs pruned from some of the back catalog for modern audiences, but landing at this point, there are so many unknowns with this most recent remastering of 3 and 4, because unlike the 1+2 remasters from 2020, they were handled by Vicarious Visions. They kind of designed the new engine and the look of that game and brought it back and really kind of made a modern version of the game you remembered playing, but not exactly, right? So like in Tony Hawk 1 and 2, they had the bones there in those original versions, but it wasn't until like 3 and 4 when they started adding in specific mechanical things like spine transfers and reverts, where the game really like clicked for people. And with 1+2, they went back and added those mechanics in. So it was the levels and the skaters and the look of those original games, but with kind of the mechanical depth of some of the later games. But sadly, as people may or may not know, after 1+2 released, Vicarious Visions was kind of weirdly absorbed into Activision Blizzard, and they were put on the Diablo 2 Resurrected project. They were kind of working on that for a while, and then kind of like Neversoft, Vicarious Visions went away and they're just part of Blizzard now. So like kind of like weird history repeating itself with the Tony Hawk series. But that big long diatribe and story to say that now it's Iron Galaxy working on the 3 and 4 remake or remaster, however you want to call it. And so there was a lot of I don't want to say like distrust. There's definitely a lot of excitement going into it, but it's just when it comes to non-Neversoft and non-Vicarious Visions, the Tony Hawk series has not had a great track record. Specifically, you know, there's the Robomoto era, which were, you know, Tony Hawk Ride and Shred and the bad Pro Skater remake, and then Pro Skater 5, which is straight up, like, I'm not going to mince words. I played that. That is one of the worst video games that I have ever played. Like, it is that bad. Like, any person you hear online say that game is bad, it is one of the worst games I have ever played. I'll
remember that.
But like, even back in the day, like, there's different weird ports of Tony Hawk games that, like, Treyarch made some levels for one of the old games, and like those, it's kind of like a commonly held, it's a commonly held belief that like the non-Neversoft levels are like not good. Right? Like, they just kind of, they had that sauce at that studio to make this stuff. On the whole, Tony Hawk 3 and 4, it is the skeleton of the 1 and 2 remake. It plays virtually identical to that. There's no new, like, you know, core tricks or, like, you know, mechanical changes, really. There's like new special tricks and stuff for no, the new skaters and everything, and there's like new skaters, that sort of stuff. But like, the thing that kind of tripped me up was whenever I went in to create my custom skater, it is the exact same character presets from 1+2. It's the exact visual look of, like, you know, how tricks are animated. The sound effects are all identical to 1 and 2. So it's very much built off of that technology, but just with new, you know, new skaters, new parks, new music on the soundtrack, that sort of thing. Tony Hawk 3 is very similar in structure originally to 1 and 2, where you load into a level, there's a list of goals that you complete, you do that, and then you move on to the next level. Tony Hawk 4, on the other hand, changed the structure of the game completely. You still had goals in each of these levels, but there was no more 2-minute timer. You were allowed to freely skate around a level. The levels were a lot bigger, so you kind of explored more than you would in Tony Hawk 3. And you would talk to NPCs, and they would give you a goal to complete. And, you know, then you would get like a 2-minute timer to do this one thing, right? Tony Hawk 4 in these remasters is...
Are they larger maps too?
Yes. It's not like a crazy like increase, but it is like a significantly bigger map than what you would see in Tony Hawk 1 through 3. So this game, Tony Hawk 4, it has been chopped up and molded into the 1 through 3 format, where you have the 2-minute timer, there's the list of 10 goals or whatever the final number is, and you kind of skate through the level, you do those goals, and, you know, progress just like the other games. This has come at a pretty significant hit to the structure of the game and a lot of the content in that game, which is kind of unfortunate. Ever since, you know, these games were announced, we've kind of known this. Like, this really shouldn't come as a surprise to people unless you were completely, like, out of the blue and, like, you know, you weren't paying attention to any, like, marketing or anything like that. I don't really want to say that, though, because, like, they've had, like, some weird shaky things with the marketing where it's like, you know, who said there was no career? But, like, it's not the career from Tony Hawk 4. Like, so...
Sure.
Tony Hawk 3, remarkably, like, that one feels closer to the original. Tony Hawk 4, like, there's missing goals from those levels. There's no NPCs that you talk to. There are NPCs that are in the levels themselves that you can, like, run into and stuff, but there's no, like, custom dialogue from any of those missions that would have been from those original skaters.
What do you do if you run into them?
Just like the NPCs.
Interact with them at all? Yeah,
you can like physically knock them down, or like
sometimes
they knock you down. But yeah, there's no dialogue or talking in this game. There were 2 levels in Tony Hawk 4 that were bonus levels that are not present in this game. So this was another like kind of weird thing with the marketing where they said it was going to be all levels, but then like these levels, I guess they don't count as technically like Tony Hawk 4 levels, because one of them was a ported early version of a Matt Hoffman BMX level that they put into the game, and then the other one was this kind of fun carnival that had a bunch of custom rides and, you know, other custom NPCs and animations and stuff. Both of those levels are not in this game. As a result of that, there are 3 completely brand new levels, which is the first time in a very long time. I don't have the exact year count on it, but it's the first time in a while that there have been brand new Tony Hawk Pro Skater levels created. And these are really cool. It's basically, one is a movie studio, which is a really fun one that I think you would like.
Yeah.
One is an abandoned...
I know there's a water slide.
Yep, an abandoned water park. That one's been very heavily in the marketing.
Yeah.
And then the other one is like a giant pinball machine that's like zombie themed. So that one's the very visually like kind of distinct one. Everything's like very bright, cartoony. There's giant pinballs that roll around that can knock you over. You can like get launched up the ball tube into like a giant air and stuff. So that level's pretty cool. The water park is like a fun environment. It's kind of reminiscent of some older Tony Hawk levels, but this is definitely, I think, the biggest level in the game. There's a lot of like, you know, little slides that you can teleport up to and do tricks off of. There's like empty pools everywhere. And then the movie studio lot is a fun one. It's on the smaller side. They have like little sets that have LED like volume walls that are ramps. They have green screen areas. And probably my most favorite part of the level is they have a dolly track that goes all around the outside. So you can just like kind of grind across the dolly track, and takes you to all these different areas of the level. There's like a back lot that has like stuff set up. So I think like art wise and like concept wise, they're very fun additions. Obviously it would have been great to have all of the original content from Tony Hawk 4 in there. But I think the new levels, they are pretty fun. I'm having fun with them. I think it's going to take me a lot longer to, like, if we were going to do like a tier list or something, say like where they would rank compared to other like more traditional levels from the game. But specifically, I've been having a lot of fun with them.
Well, I would say like, would you say, I mean, I think it's fair to say that you're such a big Tony Hawk Pro Skater fan that even if it was just a 1-for-1, you'd be sufficiently happy with it. So is it like, are you satisfied in terms of like, hey, you get more Tony Hawk Pro Skater that looks like 1+2 kind of, you know, fidelity wise and stuff? Or is it like, you know, because part of it is like, sounds like 4 is almost like a reimagined as a whole new game, right? Like does that still hold up as its own experience, or is it just the idea that you're playing those, you know, games and maps again?
Yeah. Me personally,
or is it like you have to wait to determine?
Me personally, with the proper expectations going in, which is always the most important part. I had the Band-Aid ripped off. I knew this was how Tony Hawk 4 was going to work. And honestly, if it's this or no Tony Hawk, then I'm fine with this. Like, I'm happy.
Sure.
Like, I would rather have this in existence than them just have canceled this project, which was the prevailing story for a while, was that this was going to be a thing, and then they canceled it whenever they were doing all that, you know, reorganizing with Vicarious Visions.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of fun with it. I have put about 12 hours into the full game already, and that's enough to fully go through and 100% both games with my custom skater. And I've almost done that with another one of the pro skaters with Tony Hawk, which is, you know, how do you not skate as him first, essentially?
Custom.
But so like I've seen like the content of the game. Pretty much what's left would be me just going through and replaying the game with new skaters and like going for challenges that they have in the menu. So I've seen a good amount of the game. I would say as a reimagining, it it works. They did a good enough job conforming it to the goal structure of the older games. They picked a lot of the fan favorite goals and kind of cut the ones that I think like less people really liked or cared about. What I think becomes the issue then is the scale of the levels and how you interact with them, because in like 1 through 3, for instance, with the smaller levels, once you know what you're doing and you know like where all the collectibles are in the level and stuff, you can get to the point where like within 1 run or maybe 2 you can finish everything, right? And with how big the Tony Hawk 4 levels are, like I keep saying how big, it's like they aren't massive. Like I'm not trying to like oversell that, but it's like, you know, 50% to like 75% bigger than a Tony Hawk 3 level, than I would say. And so what you find is with the 2-minute timer, you're like, okay, on this run, I'm going to go to like this part of the map and do the stuff that I can do here. And like, maybe if I'm lucky, I'll get to some other stuff. It's like, you have to like approach the level differently. And they've kind of added a functionality in the game settings where you can turn up the timer. So you can like set it to up to an hour that you have to accomplish these goals. But
interesting. Okay.
When I went to go do that, because I was like, you know what, maybe I'll play with like 10 minutes on it so I can get like closer to that feeling of Pro Skater 4. But then they give a pop-up where it's like, the intended experience is for 2-minute timer. And it's like, oh, okay, if you're going to tell me that, then I'm going to play it with 2-minute timer. Like, I'm not to toot my own horn, but like, I'm kind of good at Tony Hawk. So it's like, that doesn't matter to me. I was just trying to make it, you know, maybe closer to the experience that it was originally. But then it's like, well, if you're saying that as developers this is the intended experience, then I'm going to do it this way. But like, you end up replaying the Tony Hawk 4 levels more times to complete everything than you do the Tony Hawk 3 levels. And so it's just like a weird kind of, essentially how I will best describe it is that it feels like it was done more out of budgetary constraints than it was a creative decision to handle the game that way. Like, it feels like we already have the structures for all these other games. We don't have the money or the time to be able to do a bunch of custom assets and a bunch of custom animations and dialogue and all this other stuff. So we're just going to chop what we can and kind of conform it into this older style, which, again, like, if I'm being honest, it's just like, I still had fun playing it. It's still the great gameplay from 1 and 2. It's still the classic levels from 4 outside of the 2 bonus stages. Plus, you get some new stages to play around with. So it's like, I'm a bit conflicted where it's like, I had fun with it. I enjoy these games. I think it's a very fun game, but like, it's just, if you're going into it thinking that it's going to be like an authentic, like, you know, honoring of specifically Pro Skater 4, like, it's not. It's like, it's kind of how you described it. It's like, it's essentially a reimagining and like a different game, but with the same levels and, you know, mechanics and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit of a weird game to talk about. The community is up in arms about a bunch of random other things, like, you know,
of course,
the soundtrack. Like, the soundtrack is a perfect example. The soundtrack is really good, and there's a lot of music in it. There's like, I think 60 tracks or whatever. But when you look at the list, only 10 tracks of that soundtrack are from Tony Hawk 3 and 4. And those are games that are like, you know, propped up on how great their soundtracks are. And it's like less than 20% of the soundtrack is from those games. And it's like the songs that they got were, you know, obviously bangers and everything, but it's like, there's still a lot of other songs from those soundtracks that are kind of feel like they're missing, right?
It's fair. Yeah.
So
I did hear that they added a bunch of like fitting but different tracks to this one. I'm sure that there's a lot of, you know, copyright and licensing, I should say, issues that crop up. And how long was it that 3 and 4 or 4 originally came out?
4 was 2002, I believe. So 23 years.
Jeez. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So the music, like the new tracks, though, just because we're on the topic, I think there is one song that I'm surprised was never in a Tony Hawk game, And whenever it started playing, I was like, this is perfect. It was 2 minutes to midnight. And it's like with the 2 minute runs, it's like whenever that starts playing, it's like, oh, this feels so sick just skating to this. It fits perfectly. There's a bunch of new stuff, a bunch of old stuff, rap, hip hop, and some like electronic stuff here and there. So I think it's overall a really good soundtrack. There is just a couple songs where it's like, I wish that came back. Maybe they can add some more. I kind of doubt it, but
sure.
But yeah, like I don't want to take.
Is Doom Guy exclusively to Xbox?
Oh,
is that how that works?
Thank you for bringing this up. I do need to talk about this. Doom Guy is not exclusive to Xbox, but is exclusive to the Digital Deluxe Edition, which is the version of the game that costs $70. I was under the assumption, because obviously, as we've said many times, I bought the game physically. So I bought the game on a disc, the standard version, and I was under the assumption that there was going to be an upgrade path to get to the Digital Deluxe content. Currently, there is not. If I want the Doom Guy and the Revenant and the extra tracks and stuff that gets added, I need to pay $70 extra to get the Digital Deluxe Edition. That, suffice to say, is not happening. So I really hope that they add, honestly, I will pay like $20 up to $30 because I am that much of a Tony Hawk fan.
I couldn't be convinced.
I will spend up to $30 if that's a Digital Deluxe upgrade to go from my version of the game to get that content. But the fact that there's no upgrade, that is ridiculous in my opinion. It's stupid. But yes, you can play as him on any platform. It's just you have to have the Digital Deluxe Edition to be able to do it, which is modern Activision. So, but yes, to put a bow on it, I don't want to take all day on Tony Hawk, but I've had a lot of fun with it. I'm still going to keep playing it. They do have some changes between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 outside of the levels and the skaters and stuff. In 1 and 2, you had a leveling system. So you could level up to, there was a trophy for level 100, essentially. So by playing the game, you would get XP and unlock things. This game does not have a leveling system, but it has a more defined challenge system. So you can go into various menus on the challenge screen, and it's with this skater, do this trick and score 250,000 points in a combo. So they have more set challenges and things like that. But yeah, I think the redesigns of the stages are cool. There's some hiccups here and there with collision and weird grinds and transfers that don't really work like they are supposed to work. But by and large, it's 1+2 again with new levels. So if you're okay with playing that kind of a game, then I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. If you like 1 and 2, I think you're gonna have as much fun playing 3 and 4 as you do 1 and 2. If you're going into it wanting 1-to-1 recreation of 4, you're probably not gonna like half of this game. So
well, there it is. You know what, I knew that there was going to be a hotly anticipated one, but I'm glad it mostly seems to be what you were craving.
And to
especially
be fair,
after the
go ahead. To be fair, it is available on Game Pass. So if people want to try that and have Game Pass, that's probably a pretty good way to experience it. If you don't want to fork over the money, obviously I wanted the physical copy and everything, so I was going to do that. But Game Pass is certainly an option to experience the game if you don't feel like spending the money on it.
Yeah. Get it while it lasts, people. If Game Pass doesn't make enough money by next year, it's going bye-bye, okay?
What do you mean Tony Hawk didn't bring in 400,000 new users?
That's their secret move.
Oh,
the Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Real quick, I have one more thing that I do have to say, because you'll appreciate this. Are you aware of Tony Hawk's presence on social media?
Yes.
And are you aware of how he occasionally will share stories about people recognizing him in public but not understanding that he is Tony Hawk? There is
Yeah, I've seen clips too.
there is a funny achievement where if you open the photo mode in while playing as Tony Hawk, an achievement will unlock that says, "Hey, you look like Tony Hawk," which I thought was a really funny
That's pretty
little
good.
gag to put in there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, photo mode. I'm always here. I have to know the ins and outs of photo mode. It's a. I was just talking about it with. Oh, I was texting Nick earlier because I had to share some Death Stranding 2 screenshot because I cannot fathom how this game looks as good as it does, and then they're also like, how about you play around with it a little bit more? So like you can open photo mode and then just create artificial light sources and then like control their angle and height independently of each other and just like completely it's I don't know how they're doing it, but
Knowing
you know what I
Kojima, I
always
would be surprised if it wasn't like physical lights and like a character came out and like adjusted them in the frame.
Yeah, no, honestly, I know there is like some sort of photo mode, like specific mission type of thing, but I have not gotten to that yet. So I'll have to see where that is. But speaking of photo mode, that actually brings us to the news. And we got a few items to cover today, and one thing that actually I'll throw in is that Cyberpunk 2077 has yet another update. And so this is update 2.3, and it's launching on July 17th alongside the Ultimate Edition releasing on Mac. So all those Mac gamers out there, rise up, okay? This is your chance. You didn't play Resident Evil Village or what's the other one? Assassin's Creed Mirage, but this is it. You got to play Cyberpunk 2077. But no, so this new update was similar to update 2.2 was developed in partnership with Virtuous. Players can essentially auto drive and use the Dalamain taxi service to reach their destinations automatically. There's there's new quests, new vehicles, a swath of photo mode improvements. And yeah, so it's not like, I know some people were expecting like, oh my God, they're gonna add freaking multiplayer. Like it's not that substantial, but the fact that it is impressive that they have said that they're done with the game and they're moving on, and then they somehow just are like, actually, we have one more update. I mean, I think they've done that twice now. And both updates have helped the game out. So yeah, definitely. If there's anything holding you back, all right, from the game, let me just say this. You know what? I'll specifically say, since I love photo mode, a plethora of new settings and customization options have been added to photo mode. It is now possible to customize the weather, the time of day to obtain the perfect shot, while also choosing from a greater selection of NPCs, outfits, and poses. New stickers and frames have been added, and players can now customize how NPCs look at the camera during shooting, with
Wow.
greater control over heads, eyes, and shoulders during any pose, bringing deeper command over every shot. Crazy. But yeah, there you go. If there's anything holding you back from actually experiencing Night City, then don't let this, or let this encourage you. Don't let anyone stop you, because this is, or actually, you can go read my review over on respawnstation.com and then be convinced by my words how you got to go play it.
Yeah.
With that said, there's actually one more news I'll throw in there. This one's for Nick. All right, shout out Nick. I know he's listening. So publisher Cult Games and developer White Owl Inc. are thrilled to announce that Hotel Barcelona, the serial blood-soaked side-scrolling roguelite from legendary Japanese creators Suerte of Deadly Premonition fame and Suda51, need not be named, of the games, releases on September 2025. So there it is. You got a release date for this thing. I know you're a fan of Suda51, Nick. So.
Yeah, I'm cautiously looking forward to this one. It's, from what I've seen of it, it feels more like a sweary game or swearty. I've not personally played many of his games, but I know Suda's involved in like some of the concepting and the art direction and stuff. So I'm looking forward to possibly giving it a look. Good to know that it's coming out this year, though. This has been kind of in the oven for a couple years now.
Yeah. So that was a good one. And I will say that next week I'll have at least one new game to talk about. That's not it. Two new games to talk about. So stay tuned. And and then I'll throw this in there because this one looked interesting. So Back to the Dawn is a critically acclaimed prison RPG, very much so in the escapist, like the escapist or prison architect, that type of thing. They have officially launched their game Back to the Dawn on Xbox Series X and S, following its success on Steam Early Access. So this will be the launch of both, obviously, the console release on Xbox as well as the 1.0 release on PC. It looks really cool. It's like a heavy pixel art aesthetic that, obviously is I appreciate when it's done right. So there you go. That's what's on the inbox. But let's continue with some of the other things, because we got a while. Finally some news is coming out. Obviously a little bit all over the place, but
yeah.
Where do you want to go, Nick?
I want to start with the Subnautica situation, so we can kind of get that out of the way first.
Okay, yeah.
I don't have much to say on it specifically, but over the last week or so, there's been quite the commotion with the Subnautica 2 developers, Unknown Worlds, and their publisher Krafton. Specifically, there was an announcement that Subnautica 2 was planning on being released in early access in 2025. They put out this trailer that suggested that the early access was being pushed to 2026, and this was shortly on the heels of 3 of the executives of the company left or were potentially pushed out. And the CEO of the Unknown Worlds was replaced with, let me see if this article, it was replaced by somebody who ran the Striking Distance, that did the Callisto Protocol.
Sure.
But essentially what happened is the former executives of Unknown Worlds, Ted Gill, Charlie Cleveland, and Max McGuire, are now suing Krafton because, well, I'll just read this article here. This is from The Verge. Subnautica 2's creators sue their publisher for severely damaging the game's release. This is from Ash Parrish over at The Verge. And says, the battle between Subnautica 2 publisher Krafton and the 3 former executives at its developer Unknown Worlds continues. Ted Gill, Charlie Cleveland, and Max McGuire. The 3 executives who Krafton terminated earlier this year have filed a lawsuit detailing the alleged attempts by Krafton to torpedo the early access release of Subnautica 2 with the express purpose of avoiding paying a promised earn-out bonus of $250 million. So,
yes.
This is still a developing story, obviously, but it's kind of a weird and awkward situation because this was apparently this $250 million bonus buyout thing. This was part of their acquisition terms, I suppose, when Krafton purchased the studio. And yeah, it certainly doesn't look great because a bunch of developers have come out from the team saying that the game was ready for early access. We did this with Subnautica 1. We know what state the game has to be in. So it definitely looks like something kind of shady is going on here. At the same time, there's also...
It's also interesting that Krafton essentially posted that so they said that the money was $250 million that was going to go out to the team of Subnautica 2, but that they also said 90% of that would go to the 3 people that they just fired. And first of all, crazy, but also I don't know. There's something about like the fact that they were going out and being like, yeah, but like if you think about it, I know what we did was wrong, but like if you think about it, those three guys didn't need that money though. And sure, like whatever about those three guys, but like I feel like the entire studio getting kind of the kick to next year is really the icing of like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah, so it's just a very awkward situation, very weird circumstances, but who knows? If they do end up getting that money, then I certainly hope that a lot of that goes to the team. Apparently, they were talking about like redistributing that amongst team members too, but like, who knows? This is a lot of like they said this, they said that kind of stuff right now. So, just kind of something weird that popped up this week. But
Yeah. It isn't. I don't know if you've seen though, like like one of the one of the executives that was let go. I forget which one, but like he's like attempting to make a bunch of movies. Like he's got like these movies.
yeah,
He's working on a whole bunch of film stuff that like,
which
yeah,
was like
it's a
something
very
else that Crafton called out, where it's like he wasn't
yeah.
working like on the game and stuff. So yeah, it's a very weird situation all the way around.
It's yeah, no, it's like a similar situation we've had a few years ago between a developer and then a person kind of clashing, but this one feels a lot more like goofier. Like it's like everything's like a little bit more like it's like again, it's a lot of money, but like it feels a less serious. Seeing it all fold out like just seemingly online of them like
Mhm.
like beef, like they're like subtweeting each other or whatever. But
Yeah,
yes, that is well, we'll hit you guys with any more updates regarding this developing situation because again, with this lawsuit and stuff, unless something settles out of court, that you'll probably get something out of it,
hmm
some sort of an update or not. Uh, you know, next up, let's just hit the quick easy B. Earlier today, we got the cast for Zelda, the upcoming movie. Two newcomers. Well, not newcomers. They were like, I don't know if you saw this, Nick, but essentially, the actress who's been cast as Zelda, whose name is Bo Bragison.
hmm
Um, and then just while I have the names, Link is played by Benjamin Evan Ainsworth. But for, Bo Bragison, what a name. Bo, just cool, short and sweet, is actually some people discovered that she is the face scan for one of the Final Fantasy, I believe, movies. So like when she was
weird.
like even younger, they used her face for one of the characters, I guess. For yeah, so that was interesting. But there's a lot going on about like fan castings. I know some people said like Hunter Schafer should have been um
hmm
the Zelda, and I think that the cast, like this casting kind of sets an expectation of like what age they're going for in terms of these adaptations.
For sure.
So yeah, I'm curious of your thoughts. I know you're a bigger Zelda fan.
Um, so yeah, you mentioned that they're not like expressly newcomers, but they also don't have like very extensive careers from what I've seen. They've worked on like, a couple of projects here and there, and they are younger actors. I believe Bo is like 21, and I think Benjamin is like 16 or something I saw earlier today. So they're definitely younger actors. But this is ultimately the route that I would have hoped that they would have taken in casting some fresher faces that people are not familiar with. I think while it worked in its favor, if you go back and look at reactions of when they reveal that Mario movie cast, it is Chris Pratt, Charlie Day, Anya
Charlie
Taylor-Joy.
Day.
It's like it's the kind of hottest of hot actors, right? And so I think it specifically ever since they announced that the Zelda movie was going to be live action, it's like, what are you gonna do? Like that puts you in a tough spot. And I think going with relatively unknown actors is the best path forward, because people can really kind of I think the hurdle is not as high to surpass when like trying to picture those characters being portrayed by these actors. I was watching a video from Zeltic, who's a Zelda creator, and he put it very succinctly, where it's like a lot of people were saying, you know, like Tom Holland as Link, where it's like, if that were the case, it would be just that. It would be Tom Holland's Link versus just seeing Link on the screen. And so I think that's ultimately they made the right call with going with this kind of cast. As far as like the ages and stuff like that, I mean, I feel like this will kind of slip into normal Zelda time frame, early to young adulthood kind of stuff. So I'm excited for it. Obviously, it's still going to be a really weird kind of jump for me personally. Like, I don't know if live action would have been the call that I would have made, but yeah, I think so far they are going about it the way that I would in that circumstance.
That's fair. Yeah, we'll find out more. I am curious about this movie because of the director alone. I believe Wes Bell, I think, is directing it. So definitely keep my eye on it after watching the last, is it Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes movie. Now, next up, these two things we're going to link together because, I mean, it's also a semi-announcement. But we got word that Black Ops 7 will be fully revealed at Gamescom. We obviously got that little teaser trailer at Xbox Games Showcase. And so in Gamescom opening night live, we will see more of Black Ops 7. And ladies and gentlemen, we are happy to say that I shouldn't say we are happy to say. Nick might not be happy to say it. But
no,
I will be at Gamescom opening night live this year. You know, I don't know what the seating situation is, but I'll make sure I'll throw up a I don't know we don't have a hand sign, but I'll make up a hand sign and then I'll throw it up in the broadcast. But yeah, so we'll be able to see Black Ops 7 reveal. It'll be very interesting. And
how
then also,
excited are you going to be in that room? You are going to be in the room that they are showing the new Call of Duty.
You know, I will say that it's gotten me. I'm playing two really just massive games right now, but it's making me want to squeeze in Black Ops 6 before I leave, just so I'm fully I already got Black Ops 1 and 2 done. Getting Black Ops 6 in there will, I think, kind of cement my excitement enough to be like, oh yeah, this is a moment that I'm witnessing. But I'm also going to be obviously at Gamescom the following day as well. And getting my hands on with a few different games, some of which are already confirmed. We're booked on the calendar. One of those games might be Stalker 2, which was previously an Xbox exclusive console release and is now coming over to PlayStation 5. So if everything works out well, we'll be able to maybe get some hands on with a PS5 version of that game, and maybe even talk to the developers a little bit as well. Which will be very interesting. So again, stay tuned to the channel, subscribe, and all that stuff, because we have some interesting ideas of what we want to do with our Gamescom coverage this year. If you have ideas, feel free to let us know. But it's something we've literally never done before. So hopefully, it'll fumble here or there. It'll work out well. Make something cool out of it.
Very exciting, though.
Yes, yeah. Very. Now, the last piece here is Ghost of Yotei. They had a deep dive showing a little bit more of the game, obviously, as expected. It's still actually a really, really funny clip that I just 2 weeks ago came across, where it's, if you didn't know, Nick and I, you can watch our full reactions to some of the Summer Game Fest events. Pretty much, you can see my reaction to all of them, I think, all the major ones, because I had someone there with me to give me company. But one of them, Nick and I reacted to the State of Play, and there's a moment at the end where Nick is like, imagine, it's like the wolf was growling, and Nick is like, imagine this is all they show, and then a beat later they're like, find out more in July, and it's like, oh yeah, that is all they're showing. So yeah, it's a great clip, but they finally showed more. Nick, what do you think of Ghost of Yotei? And by the way, context, neither of us have played Ghost of Tsushima.
Sadly, I am a Sucker Punch fan. I've played all the Sly Coopers and I've played all of the Infamous games except for the First Light. I think that's like
Second
a
Son?
DLC or something like that.
Oh, First
I
Light
played
is
Second
First Light is
Son,
DLC.
but whatever First Light is in relation to that,
You-
I've not played.
Yeah, you're right.
So I'm a Sucker Punch fan. I just haven't gotten around to Ghost of Tsushima yet. And now I find myself in a bit of a weird spot because I saw the deep dive state of play for Yotei, and it's like, wow, this looks really cool. I kind of like the direction that the story's going in. It's like, do I play Tsushima or do I just wait for Yotei and play Yotei? Because they, story-wise, are set like a couple hundred years apart. So like, it's probably not going to have like direct connections outside of like, you know, the story of a ghost or whatever. But yeah, this looks really cool. It looks gorgeous, but like the first game looked gorgeous. So it's like kind of like, you know, yeah, of course it does. It looks amazing. Like visually, it just looks incredible. The music is really intriguing. It's like mixing Eastern instrumentation with like Western kind of themes. And so it has this very unique sound to it. The gameplay looks a bit more varied. I was watching some reactions, and I guess in Tsushima, you mainly just have like the one katana through the entire game, whereas this time they're adding in like chain weapons and pole arms and rifles and bows and arrows and stuff. So a couple different options for gameplay. The one thing that probably surprised me the most and made me go like, wow, that's really cool, is so in the first game they had Kurosawa mode, where they partnered with Akira Kurosawa to give it like a black and white visual filter, but like also tweak it to make it look very close to those original samurai movies. They're partnering with two more directors for this game, which is Takashi Miike and Watanabe. I don't have the first name in front of me, unfortunately, but the director of Samurai Champloo and Cowboy Bebop. The Takashi Miike mode is, it zooms in the camera more during combat and also adds more blood and mud effects, which is pretty crazy. But the Watanabe mode is so cool. It adds like lo-fi hip-hop music that he created specifically for the game while you're exploring and going through combat. And it's like, what a crazy like inclusion for a game like this.
It changes the vibe of it too. Like it's so unique, just having just, you know, a score that's obviously crafted intentionally to the narrative structure of the game, and then also being like, also, how about like lo-fi girls just always watching over you, you know, the whole time.
I think it's a really great addition though, because like you can have the score on for like the story and like the cinematic moments that you want like the original score for, but then if it's like, you know, you're just off doing open world stuff, it's like, oh, I gotta go clear out this camp or whatever. I'm not sure exactly how the Ghost games tackle that sort of aspect, but if it's like, if you're just exploring or whatever, it's like, yeah, flick that on and like just get like a different vibe that you can kind of chill out to, and, you know, not pay, you know, as much attention to it as you need to. So I think it's a really cool addition that is really sick.
So it would be, I think, kind of maybe alleviate some of the tiredness of maybe going for a platinum in the post game,
exactly,
kind of stuff, you know.
So,
but you know, I was just gonna say that like this is, you know, this is a prime example. You know, Ghost of Yotei. I think, you know, as Nick was saying, we haven't played Tsushima, and now it's kind of like, okay, like if this game comes out in October, is it the, can we squeeze it in before then, or is it worth playing before then? And I think that kind of is the heart of this discussion, this episode, which is how we pick what we're going to play next. It's always a muddled question because and it's definitely a little bit different for us versus, you know, like someone who's just working a 9 to 5 and comes home, you know, plays maybe an hour a day to relax. So we'll get to that conversation, but first, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor.
Yeah, I want to get down there just in case. Like, I don't know what it does yet, so just in case it takes a bit of time. I want to give us plenty of time to do it.
Yeah.
Is it one of the, okay, that's an Evertail. Okay.
Alright, I opened it.
Oh,
Oh,
shit!
it summons a fucking dog!
And we are back. So, as you eloquently transitioned there, we're talking about how we decide what to play. And this is a very interesting topic, not only because, you know, we have a bunch of different angles to tackle it from, but also you and I would say, are more on the end of people that play a lot of games in a given year versus somebody that like is thinking, like you said, like maybe the 9 to 5 people, or the people that are like, do I play Call of Duty or Fortnite tonight? Like, you know, we have a lot of different types of games that we like to play. We like to experience a lot of different things. So I think, first of all, I mean, I think we should just pick up the conversation where we just left off before the ad break and talk about Ghost of Tsushima, because I think that really is the perfect kind of conundrum that you and I find ourselves in, where it's like, both you and I would say, maybe not obsessively use, but we definitely like to make use of the How Long to Beat website, which is a great
Sure,
resource for people that tracks, like, you know, how long games are, because it's such a fluid and not very uniform metric of a game, right? And so I look at, you know, the playtime for Ghost of Tsushima, and it's like, yeah, it's an open world action RPG kind of game. Like, that is quite a time commitment. I haven't checked it in a minute. Maybe I should pull that up real quick and see.
I'm gonna guess 42 and a half hours for Ghost of Tsushima.
I was gonna say, I don't think that is too far off, to tell you the truth. Ghost of Tsushima, main story is 25 hours, main plus sides 46 hours, which is usually what I base my times off of. And so I pretty much nail on the head there. Completionist, 62 hours. So
that makes sense.
That is not what I would call a short game. It is not the longest game by any stretch, but like that is a commitment. And so when we're only a couple of months out from the release of Ghost of Yotei, which is similarly probably going to be in that 40 to 60 hour range, right? That becomes a hard decision.
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you think you're going to play Ghost of Yotei? And if you are, do you think you're going to try to make time for Tsushima first, or are you just going to hop into Yotei?
Well,
if you're going to play
here's the thing, right? I'll say this, because I think, like, to kind of really tackle the big question of, like, how do we decide what we play? I think there's several different reasons or methods that we kind of choose in sifting what game we're going to tackle next.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those is this example. And we've actually had two examples of it in this podcast alone. There's obviously Ghost of Tsushima, but also Black Ops 7. Both things where I'm like, oh, I'm going to play the other games because the new one is coming out. And the new one becomes an excuse to finally get the last one off of your backlog,
mm-hmm.
Or a replay in case of Black Ops for me. So yeah, that is the question, right? Like Ghost of Tsushima. Am I going to play Ghost of Tsushima before Yotei? And I find myself in a similar situation to you, where it's, is it worth kind of going through and experiencing that story and then jumping into a Yotei as like a follow up, because there's this risk of inundating yourself with the same thing and then becoming like, oh, it's a great burger, but fuck, I've had too much of it, type of thing. And it's personally happened to me earlier this year, where for a combination of reasons, I went in and I actually played through Doom 2016 for the very first time, because Doom The Dark Ages was coming out, and I managed to fly through that, and then I hit Eternal, and then again, a combination of reasons, but I have not been able to go back to that game yet, and it's been just eating away. for me to just actually go and play and finish that game, especially because it's like a more sizable one. So anyway, to answer your question, I am currently leaning towards playing Ghost of Tsushima. But I do think that if I do, even though I'm using it as an excuse to play it, I don't think I would play Yote right away after that, just out of kind of space for that game. Again, it would be different if it was like you had mentioned Infamous. I believe both those games are somewhere around the 10 to 15 hour range.
Sure.
And so going like you can back to back both of those in the time that it would take to just play one of these. And so maybe something like that is more understandable, or more like okay, because it's not as overbearing, but it's like, yeah, it would be, I think, too much for me to commit to both.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it, because I do fear burnout with big games like that, and specifically when visually they're going to look very similar, they're going to play very similarly. It's like, it's really going to come down to the story, and I think I just kind of like this like Kill Bill-esque setup that they have for this new game versus what I've seen of Tsushima. It's like I want to play both, but it's just like I should have played Tsushima like 2 years ago, right? It's good that you circled back around, though, to tackle the main topic, because I did just kind of like jump in there and didn't really set that up properly. But I think another big aspect that we both just talked about is game length. I think that is a very big factor for me personally when I'm trying to play a bunch of different games in a given year. Like, variety is what makes gaming exciting, I feel like. Bouncing between different types of games, and by proxy different lengths of games. And so whenever I'm done with like a really big game, I typically don't want to go into another really big game unless it is a weird outlier year. Like, I will give 2023, where there was a lot of games that I wanted to play that year that were like, actively high on my, I want to play list, that were also very long games, specifically Tears of the Kingdom and Starfield. It's like, those are both games that I put over 100 hours into. And it's like, sometimes, I could kind of trick myself with that example. They were a couple months apart release wise, but like, one's fantasy, one's sci-fi. So like, I can still kind of have that variety there in the gameplay and the theming and stuff. But typically, as a general rule of thumb, once I finish a really long game, I'm not really that excited to hop into another one. Like, I will typically play a bunch of shorter games after that. I don't know if you're the same way or not.
No, you're I mean, well, look, it's not a surprise, but Nick and I are very similar in that way, in multiple ways in how we play games. But yeah, so I definitely ebb and flow in terms of the commitment that I make for games, because at the end of the day, it's sort of like this, you commit to something for a very long time, especially if you're chipping away at a game, it's like, rather large, that you want to have a little bit more of that instant kind of satisfaction. And I think it'll change player to player, how, when you're tackling your backlog, or when you're looking at what games you want to play. And by the way, I'm saying backlog as a kind of a collective term. Like, the game could have come out last week and it would still be, technically part of your backlog, because it's a game that you want to play, type of thing. So, I like to fluctuate in terms of how I'm handling things. But then I think another part of that is genre. As much as like the length is also very much so a factor, but it's also the type of game I play. I like to make sure that I'm not just hitting the same genre over and over again. There are some genres that I think I can probably stretch a lot more. There's like I like to think, right. If I'm giving a metaphor about it, I think like a player is pretty much like a rubber band, and so like you're able to, like, your core at the heart of it, where you're the least amount of resistance, is one genre. And so like for me, it's like, for like a first person shooter, something like a Call of Duty or something, I know I can always go back to it, and it'll be the least friction for me to enjoy it. And then occasionally I'll snap a little bit out. The tension will increase. I'll check out an RTS or like or some sort of like weird I don't know, like I'll play a racing game or a strategy game or something. And then like that whole time I'm like, this is interesting, and I'm engaging with it because I'm like out of my comfort zone, but that's also what makes it interesting. But I have to go back to something that I know is safe afterwards. So I will personally I'm looking at my my list of games that I played last year, and you can definitely see. So like I had, like Far Cry 3, a pretty short game, Wolfenstein: The Old Blood, a pretty short game, and then Remnant from the Ashes, a pretty long game. And then you go in, we have Slay the Princess, which is a visual novel. House Flipper 2, Botany Manor, all really, really short games, and then Division 2, including the DLC. Like that was, and that was a huge one. And so like yeah, it definitely it goes back and forth, and I think that's a very kind of healthy balance that I find to make sure that I'm not ever getting too just and also like to speak of the genre specifically. So I had very wide smattering of games across this year, but like I'll this one particular stretch, I go from this turn-based like adventure RPG called Echo Generation to Crime Boss Rocky City, a first-person roguelike, to one of Nick's favorite rhythm games, Spin Rhythm XD. And then I go to like Darktide, Warhammer 40K Darktide. So I'm going through all sorts, and then I like a little bit after that, I'm playing XO1, which is essentially a game where you're like a disc floating and bouncing across waves, and you're like you're doing that. And then the game I played after that is The Evil Within. So like a wide range of games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's that sweetens the deal to make sure that if people are saying, oh man, the games are so boring these days, and I say a similar thing to when people talk about movies and like the movie industry is dying, like there's no whatever. Like I'm like, you're clearly not watching the right stuff. You're clearly not playing the right stuff if you think video games are running out of ideas or are dying. Other than like the fact that everyone in the industry is getting fired, that's a different point.
Right.
I'm talking about the releases of the games and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's specifically lengthwise. I find myself constantly in a tough spot because a lot of the games that I'm interested in end up being RPGs, and it's like there's not many short RPGs, if I'm being honest. Like some of them come out and they're like, "Hey, we're a short RPG," to try to get people into like that specifically are looking for that. But it's like many of the ones that I look for, it's like bare minimum I'm looking at like 30-hour game, like down the barrel.
Yeah.
And so that becomes very tough when you're interested in so many of them, because it's like, okay, at this point, I know I'm going to be getting these games. I know I want to play these games. I don't have the time to play these games. And that's where you can kind of fall into a bit of a trap, and it's a trap that many people can attest to, myself included, with Steam sales, where we buy a bunch of games and then we don't ever play them. I have probably like 70 games in my Steam library that I've never played, and it's just like I spent money that I earned doing actual work for, and it's just like I just don't have the time. I think it's a good problem to have ultimately, because that just means that there's so much good stuff out there that like are fighting for your time and your energy and your entertainment and everything. So I think that speaks well to the quality of games that are always coming out. But it does mean that something like making a decision of what video game do I want to play can start to become a bit of a hard prospect. So yeah, that's
and so for you, I think that's also interesting because I mean, I think it also applies to me, but to you to a little bit of a higher degree in terms of the balance between and again, everything is about balance. You know, gaming diet is just like a real diet. You want to have the genre pyramid or whatever. But you know, one of the things that you kind of have to think about is like new games, like upcoming games or just freshly released games, versus games like Streets of Rage, where you go back and you're going playing through that entire kind of catalog. So how do you kind of go through of when of like what genre or sorry, what time period of game you want to go back to, like a 2000s game, a 90s game, a 10s game? Geez, that sounds bad to say. Ugh.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I still struggle to find the balance with, but ultimately it's very similar to how you were describing genre change ups for you. Like, I almost kind of include retro as a genre at this point, and like,
Sure.
you know, it's a debate determining on what's considered a retro game these days. You know, people are saying 360 and stuff is retro, and it's like, I don't think that'll ever be retro to me. But so like it comes down to genre, and typically what ends up happening, like I can do the same thing that you just did. I'll pull up my list that I played from last year real quick, or actually I'll actually do this year.
Go ahead.
Go ahead while I'm pulling this up.
Oh no, I have it up.
Oh, mine?
I have yours up.
Okay. I need to see it physically though. So okay, so just this year, right? I'll go through my first. Let's just do my first 10. We'll do my 10 games. The first 10 games on here. I started the year out with Rock Band 4. That I would say I would consider to be a pretty modern game. It's on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Then I went to Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Fairly new game. 2023, PS5, like next gen or this current gen kind of game. Star Wars Outlaws. Also current gen. Modern game. So that's 3 games back to back. Then I went with Klonoa Fantasy Reverie series, which is a remastering of Klonoa 1 and 2. So it's technically a new game, but Klonoa 1 originally released on the PlayStation 1 and Klonoa 2 on the PlayStation 2. So that comes into like a bit of a weird area where like it is a new release of those games, but they feel like old games. So like I kind of filed that into like, I played a couple modern games. I want something a bit retro. Let's do Klonoa. Then I went to Max Payne 1 through 3. Max Payne 1 and 2, definitely I would consider in the retro camp. Max Payne 3, 360, again, I don't really think it's retro, but depending on who you ask, that is a retro game. So kind of continued that retro kind of couple games there. And then this was probably around the time that Tony Hawk got announced, because I replayed the original 3 and Tony Hawk 4, as well as Guacamelee. And so mix of retro, mix of modern. Typically, I will treat it like a genre, to kind of answer your question, where it's like, okay, I've been playing a lot of new games recently. I think I want something a bit older, something that I haven't played before, that I've heard a lot of, you know, great things about, that I want to experience for myself. The weird kind of thing is like where I'm at right now. So I just finished The Alters, and I'm playing Tony Hawk / essentially done with it. Like I'm still obviously going to be chipping away at that, but like I would be fine putting it off to the side already and playing something else, because I'm very familiar with those games, right? So that's a bit of a weird thing, because it's like it is a new game, but it's remasters of old games again, and they feel like a new game. So that one's a bit tricky. But currently I am thinking, like I've just played a couple new games, so I think I might want to try something old, and I have a couple of ideas of games that I want to play. But then I'm also at the point where it's like, okay, I've had Clair Obscur Expedition 33 installed for like a month and a half now. I've been wanting to play it. I don't want to be left in the dust with that game. But it's like, if I don't play it now, when am I going to play it? Because there's so much other stuff that I want to play. So, yeah, I think for me specifically in regards to it, I do treat retro games as a as a genre, but I'll also say that my philosophy on that has kind of changed the last like year or two that I've been doing my gaming habits, because before it would just kind of be scattershot. It's like I just want to play what I want to play, and that's honestly a good strategy to take. I think it's just like, if you have a desire to play something, play that. That's what you're meant to be playing. At the same time, I've been wanting to, because as a collector, I have a shelf of video games that I've spent money on that I have not played, that constantly looks at me and is like, why did you spend money on me if I'm just going to sit on this shelf, right? So within the last year or two, it's been a bit more of
it's like a gamer's Annabelle doll, like just like you wake up in the middle of the night just like, oh, why haven't you played with me yet? Yeah,
for sure. And so in the last like year or two, I've kind of had a change of perspective where it's like, okay, I do need to start playing these games that I've bought. And so it's picking a game or two or a series and being like, okay, I'm going to go into this year. Streets of Rage that you mentioned before, that's kind of one of those things where it's like, I've heard so many great things about Streets of Rage. I really have very little Sega history. Like, I was not really a Sega person when I was growing up, so that's like a kind of a big blank spot for my like gaming like knowledge and everything. And it's like, I've listened to the music for Streets of Rage for so long, so it's like I have all these things where it's like, I know I'm probably gonna like it. I'm just gonna, sit here and play it. It's beneficial because those games are definitively retro. They are very short, so I was able to play through like the entire trilogy minus Streets of Rage 4 in like a day and a half or 2 days, right? So like, that's kind of the combination of things where it's just like, so it's a retro thing that I want to experience. It's different from the newer stuff that I've been playing, and it's also short, so I can get through a good amount of it in a relatively quick amount of time.
I think the other thing kind of, yes, so the genre is a big factor. Time length is a big factor. A good blend, I think, of retro and new is not just like good to get the backlog a little bit less, a little bit cleared off, but also I find it's very refreshing to I think, especially nowadays, again, I'm addressing some constant criticisms that are brought up about like, oh, video games don't look as good as they can be. And look, sure, you can absolutely argue like, oh, video games can look better or worse, or like have this, that, or the other. But I think that playing through older titles and then jumping back to a more modern title, like even if you go from something, I went like just this year, I played Split Second at the start of the year, and then I finished that up, and then I went to a little bit later, I played a few other games, and I played Need for Speed Heat. In between that, I also played like an indie game and a VR game and a PS3 game that I was replaying. But then I went to Need for Speed Heat, and it was like all of a sudden, again, Heat's a few years old now, but like it was like, what the hell? Like graphically, what's going on? And then I went to, and then I played like Indiana Jones: The Staff of Kings, which is like a PlayStation 3 game, I believe. Like it's a PlayStation 3 360 game, and the Wii, by the way. But I forgot to say this. I don't know if I said this or not. Actually, I don't remember. I went back to. Here's a small side tangent. All right, so I went to my parents' house, and my mom just handed me like a bag of stuff, and it's like, take this crap. I don't want it in my house anymore. I was like, all right, fine. So I came home, and I was sifting through some of it. I have a whole bunch of steelbooks that I'll definitely have to show off at some point. Then it also had my Wii collection, and I found out that I actually own a copy physically of Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings on the Wii, which is a crazy discovery considering I did not even remember that game when I was playing through it. And then I also had what my mom thought was a hard drive. It was like a surface like this big, like very thin, and it was actually my PlayStation TV. And if you don't, yeah, if you don't know what
nice.
PlayStation TV is, it's like a PlayStation Vita that you can plug in. It doesn't have a display; you just have to plug it in, and it works as like almost like a console. And so it had two things inside of it, Nick. It had the proprietary Sony Vita SD card, which is bullshit.
Mhm.
It's like just a little bit thicker than a micro SD card because then they can sell you on it. And then there was a game inside, and that game, Nick, was Persona 4 Golden.
Oh wow.
Absolutely crazy pull from inside. Shout out old me for not selling that game with my Vita to get a Nintendo Switch. But anyway, I digress. But anyway, so I played Indiana Jones and Staff of Kings, and then after that I played Avowed. And so like you're going from one kind of graphic fidelity to, I mean, Avowed, with all my criticisms, looks really like just really vibrant and nice. So yeah, that's a kind of a blend as well that comes with switching what decade the game that you're playing goes from. Another thing that I think for me personally that I find a lot of kind of satisfaction from, that I always try, and I'm sure Nick and Austin and Alexa have picked up on this over the years, is if someone's playing something or planning on playing something, I'll try to be like, okay, how do we make something happen? If like someone's like, oh, I'm kind of interested in playing this game, then I'm like, oh, how about like we both play it, and then at least there's like a sort of a conversation around it, because it's similar to what Nick was saying about, like, if you don't play Clair Obscur now, you're going to miss out on the general like current discussion, right? Like that's happening right now. Obviously, those conversations, those reviews that you'll be looking forward to, they're up on the internet. You can read them whenever you want. Even after you finish the game, you can go and revisit the reviews. Much like you can go and check out our reviews on respawnstation.com. But they you're not like involved in the active discussions that are happening about the game as it's happening while it's hot and fresh. And I think getting a friend along or friends along to play it with you is a good way to essentially create that dialogue again internally in a smaller bubble. But when and it's sort of like this part isn't for promo, but it's like the idea is what it came from. But that's kind of what Retrograde was, and is. We'll bring it back, I swear. But Retrograde was essentially conceived as a show where obviously you're missing out. And the first episode, for example, was Warhammer 40K Space Marine, and I think that's actually an example of multiple things we're discussing here. Because one, we chose Warhammer 40K Space Marine because the sequel was coming out, so we're like, it's going to be topical. It's the new thing, and so it's an older game from about like 15, 20 years ago. No, 15 years. I'll say 15 years ago. And it's currently in the conversation because of the sequel. But then all three of us playing it again meant that we could create that conversation of like it being a fresh new thing for all of us to experience it for the first time. So that that was a fun experience. And also we obviously looked at the time and been like, okay, this campaign is manageable. We can fit this with it, into our schedules and not have it be a crazy time sink. Unlike Dragon, unlike some other games that happened later on.
That was definitely a lesson learned, where it's like, if we're gonna try to do something like this, the long RPGs are not conducive to that kind of conversation.
No, especially and we'll definitely take those lessons going forward to the how we bring that back. Now, for us, there's also another factor, and it's not like important to kind of everyone. Like the listener might not necessarily relate to it, but I think it's a significant enough point that we can't really ignore it in our discussion, which is the fact that like we also review games and we play certain games because we're given codes, and that definitely impacts the slate of games and the order of things that are happening, right? Like, so right now I'm playing through Death Stranding 2, and then like a week after I got into Death Stranding 2, this other game dropped in my lap, and this game I'm trying my best to get through it, but man, I have a feeling it's going to be extremely fucking long. but and I'm not gonna, again, details next week. But yeah, so that meant that because I had this code, and in order for me to be timely in any way, shape, or form regarding its coverage, I had to jump into that one kind of head first. And even as we're playing, before Death Stranding 2, there was Ruffy in the Riverside, and we kind of fluctuate. I think me the most out of everyone, but still it's definitely every now and then, you can't go too far into the backlog or commit to something that's again, like a Doom Eternal, or I think off camera, I'd started playing Horizon Zero Dawn. Much to my dismay, I have not played that game in 3 months or so. So, you have to manage what games we're playing. How do you find that balance, Nick, with regarding specifically reviewing games and also having to write about games after you play them too?
It is something that, I'll be honest, I kind of struggle with. It's a great problem to have, right? Being given access to a game to review. At the same time, again, combination of factors. When I have that wall of games staring me down, it's like, man, I was, thinking maybe I'd start playing Chrono Trigger or something this year finally, world famous JRPG. But, taking a look at my, previous review, it's like, I haven't picked up a review here in a month or two. Maybe I should, have Sri send me a code for something. So I'm actually carrying my weight when it comes to the reviews. So it's something that I struggle with specifically, but it's it's a good problem to have. Ultimately, it's trying to find the time between something that you have interest in, but is something that, for lack of a better word, you're it's more like playing a game as work than it is for you have an express interest, this is the game that I am going to be playing next. It's oh, we got a code for this, yeah, it looks pretty cool, let's check it out, I'll make time for it. So it's something that I don't really have a great answer for, because I feel I don't really have a great solution for it, where it's just
sure,
they'll come along and it's okay, yes, now is the time where it feels right that I should be doing a review and playing something like this. But for a while, when we were talking about how we got into the games media stuff, that was seemingly less of a problem, because when we were just out there trying to generate that backlog of content that you were saying, it was well, we'll just write reviews on the things that we're playing in general. So it's anything that I Sekiro. I think I was playing Sekiro around that time. It's I didn't really have an express desire that I was going to review that game, but it's I just played it, might as well write a review for it. So
yeah,
sometimes it can kind of coalesce in those ways where it makes sense, but then other times it's definitely more of a conscious choice, where it's okay, this is what I'm playing for review. Now that I have a review done, the altars, now let's dive into something that's not going to be likely for a review. But as an extension, we also have the podcast now, where it's even if we're not doing a written review for it, we're still having a conversation and talking about it.
Yeah, and giving some sort of kind of, obviously, exposure or coverage for the game, because that's what's important when they're kind of trusting us with codes. And it definitely is a nice place to be. I find myself essentially I think I was a lot worse at it when we first started getting codes. To the point where, for me, I'm always the kid that was so enamored by the idea of video games, right? Oh my god, I have to, it was such a hard-earned thing. You have to pay to get the video games, to you got to save up to get that, the $5 video game that you can find. And so for me, it's every time we got a code, and it still is every time we got offered a code, I'm what the hell? You didn't give me that? You didn't give me that right now? Just through the email? And it never fails to shock me. But so initially when we first started getting codes, I played like I was like, yes, we'll cover it. I'll fucking play that. I'll do that too. And then, it came to a point where I was like, okay, I'm not making any progress on the kind of backlog of games that I had wanted to play. And then there's also like the fact of the matter is that, like, while it is incredibly cool that you're getting these games, like it's near impossible to get 100% hit rate. And what this means is you'll end up playing games like Crime Boss Rocky City for like a bunch of hours and then being like, wow, like I really don't like it, but I want to make sure at least that I don't like it by playing a little bit more of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then like a year later, get caught off by like an email being like, hey, we updated the game and we fucking changed everything. It's a perfect game. And you go back in and you're like, it's not a good game still, but I should probably play a little bit more of the game to make sure it's still not a good game. Like it's this weird cycle. But I've come to a good place now. I mean, like for me, I purchase at least one game a month, like physically, because I at some point, I just have to support at least physical media to that degree as a fan of video games. But truth be told, I rarely get to touch those games that I buy. They go on my shelf because I'm going through a lot of the review copies or review codes. And again, they're not like long games. Last game I played was Ruffy in the Riverside. Again, that was like 13 hours or so total, all said and done. And so it fluctuates, but it's just like there's a lot of them, and so you go through quite a bit. But that's part of the work, and it definitely is a little bit more like work than just play. I think like the fact that I have like a notepad next to me when I'm doing it is like a conscious like, okay, I have to like if I have a thought, then I have to like make sure I'm getting it down because I'll fucking lose it if I don't. And as I'm writing the review, I have to be like, okay, all the minus points that I had in there, the plus points I have in there, and to make sure everything's, my review actually encapsulates everything I wanted to say about it.
And the goal is fundamentally different. Like when you're playing a game for review, you are playing to experience, an appropriate amount of the game to generate your thoughts and opinions on that game in service of writing a final product being a review, right? Versus like, oh, I want to play Starfield because I think it looks fun and I think I'm going to like it. Like the end goal is having fun and enjoying it versus like trying to have like a, intellectual assessment of a game, right? So I think that like it's because
fun versus work balance.
Yeah, like it's always weird, calling it work, and I know you find it weird calling it work too. But like, there's not really a better way to describe it because it's just like you're doing something else other than strictly having fun and like decompressing and relaxing.
It's sort of like the foot in each. like a foot in each critic score or scorecard, because like on like some games you're like the critic and you're like reviewing it analytically, and some games you're like the audience and you're just like in a Metacritic there's always the two scores or whatever, or like the Rotten Tomatoes. So it's like we get to play both sides of the field there sometimes, to the benefit or to the counter benefit. Do people ever say the word counter benefit? I think I just made that up.
The counter benefit.
We gotta market
that. Yeah, that is interesting that you bring up critic versus audience, because that is quite a unique realm to live in, and like people would say, I feel, when you like, at least something that I heard when we were going through film school was just like, does it ruin watching movies for you, right? Like learning how it's made and stuff. And it's like, no, because like I can usually separate myself from that. But like it is kind of funny when, in this time that we find ourselves in when we're doing Respawn Station, it's like, I might play a game and like, if I'm getting salty or like, pissed off at something, it's just like, this game, it's, trash. I could pick out 5 different reasons why, it's not great. And then like, you play something else and you're like, man, this is incredible. I'm just having so much fun. So that is really funny. I I don't know if I have an example explicitly of that, but like I'm sure like, I'm, pounding my face into the concrete on something, and then it's just like, at this game it's trash. Like there's no way it could be good.
It's there's it is a point of like, and no, I definitely understand we're delving a little bit back into the last episode in terms of conversation, but yeah, it definitely is like when you're playing certain games, and again, I have certain games that I've played in at least fairly recent memory that I've felt this way about, where I'll play it and then I'll start feeling the like again. I'm not joking. Every time I play a game, then like we get a code for it or whatever. Like I'm in, I'm like, whoa, like let's experience this, see what's going on, and obviously the first impressions are huge in terms of like they set you up for, oh, you're gonna like this experience, or no, you're not gonna like this experience. And for me, whenever that initial impression is, oh, I don't know if this is gonna be good, it's pushing through, playing more, and then there comes the point where if I hit like this 80% of the game, and I'm like, all right, well, I gotta finish it, but man, the more I play it, the lower the score gets, and I have to like keep like, okay, I'm just plowing through it, but I don't think it's like there's a certain point where I have to cut myself off and try to like limit myself, but again, if you listen to the podcast enough, you probably figure out enough games, and we try to be very fair, regardless of what we feel about it, kind of, off the record, so to say. But
Yeah.
There's certain games to test it.
It's good that you bring that up. That was something that I wanted to mention, and it missed my mind. So circling back around to it, where when you're playing a game for a review, like you kind of have an obligation to see it through, right? So specifically what you're talking about, where it's just like, man, like it's getting worse and worse the more I play of this. When you're not doing that for review, you could just put it down and be like, yeah, I'm not enjoying it, I'm not in the mood for this at this point. But it's like when you're like signed on to do like a review, right? It's just like you kind of have to barrel through that like kind of pain or frustration or like lethargy that you might be feeling with a game. It really does have an impact on not only your enjoyment, but also like, if I'm not having fun, but I still have 10 hours of this game to get through, that's 10 hours that you can't spend on something that, you do want to play. And again, to your point that you mentioned, like, that's not everything we review naturally. I'd say more times than not when we are reviewing stuff, like, it's been generally pretty well liked, with the, the odd outlier here and there. But, like, yeah, it's just, those ones that you really have to just chew glass on are the ones you remember.
Yeah, and that is a credit to the fact that, like, kind of bringing it back to how we pick the games that we play. I think we've gotten a lot more stringent in terms of like what we're playing for coverage and stuff, because again, like, of the games that we cover on a regular basis, of like, for obviously, full transparency, anytime you read a review over on respawnstation.com, at the bottom of the review, it'll say a review code was provided or something to that effect when we get a code. So you can literally see what games we're playing for review, what games we're just playing and we have thoughts to share on, and stuff like that. And I think we've gotten much better at sorting them out, because we get so many more codes than we actually review. Like, so many of them were like, hey, your game looks cool and all, but like, it's not for us. We're not the target audience. Our audience is not the target demographic. It just won't work out for us. Sometimes we'll be able to mix it up with kind of guest reviewers, I'll say. Like, and I know Graham kind of occasionally comes in, and he's like a strategy game player, and so like, and then like, or like, just he plays unique genres. So like, he recently had, again, you can read it on respawnstation.com, for Kaya's Prophecy. That's like a roguelike deck builder, I think is what it is. So games that we're kind of not, we try to branch out as much as we can, is what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, we've gotten much better now at looking at the games we're getting and saying, hey, this looks, and it's a lot of like you sift through a lot of games that are like maybe semi-interesting or partially interesting, and then you find the ones that you really that catch your eye for one reason or another, and giving it the time. Because again, it is we've come to realize that as awesome of a chance and opportunity as it is to literally just be on the internet talking and writing about video games and then getting sent codes and stuff. It's and there's certainly, I'm not even going to mention certain statistics that put things into perspective regarding that, but it's choosing what you play is a kind of the most powerful way you're not wasting your time, because there's a point where certain games where it just becomes like, okay, well, there's fucking 10 hours gone. Like, what the fuck? Now I got to write about it for another hour.
Yeah.
And
I just want to be playing Tony Hawk, damn it.
So, yeah. Is there any other kind of angle to this that we've not hit?
The one thing
I'm trying to think of like
that I did think of, it's kind of circling back to an older part of the conversation, but specifically when we were talking about modern versus retro, I do think there exists a third angle that we've touched on but not explicitly said, and that's indie. Because in my personal head, I do think of retro, modern games, and indie games as in their own pillars. And it's like modern games, obviously, AAA, big budget kind of. This is the cutting edge of what the video game space has to offer, right? For me, a lot of retro games have a similar effect where it's like this was the cutting edge of the time. And so like, shooters and RPGs and stuff, they have kind of a look and a feel and like, similar design. The visuals will like, 3D polygon stuff from the N64 and the PS2 and stuff. Like it has a look, right? Because that was the cutting edge technology of the time, just as like a lot of, big budget RPGs and first person shooters all, they don't look the same specifically, but like, squint and like, yeah, you can see it's a first person shooter from 2 years ago, right? Indie games, on the other hand, are again in like a pillar of their own, where it's like they are modern games, but a lot of them, due to budgetary restraints or by personal choice and stuff, go for more retro aesthetics or retro design philosophies that the AAA stuff doesn't really bother with typically. And on top of that, because of those budget restraints or team size or skill levels, the games maybe aren't as polished as like a really good retro game or a really good modern game. And so, but sometimes they are like, sometimes you get like a Sea of Stars or something like that, where it's just like, this could pass as like a AAA game if they were just, using pixel art still instead of, top of the line 3D models and stuff. So that is another kind of avenue that, again, kind of hits a lot of what we've been talking about, where it's like genre wise, if I'm basing it off of that, it's like, okay, I played some modern stuff, played some retro stuff, maybe I want to slip in like a newer indie game. That's kind of where like the Guacamelee kind of fit in to what I was playing, where it's like it is indie, it's not retro necessarily, it's not modern, but like it just kind of fits into like a different flavor again. And then typically, like, those games will usually be on the shorter side. Some of them can be long depending on the type of the game. So it's like that kind of feeds into it. And then also the kind of I completely lost where I was going with that. But yeah, it's like a different type of thing to like dedicate your focus to. It's because of the expectations of how it was made, you kind of view it a little bit differently. So that also, and I guess this is probably where I was going with that, because indie doesn't have the express resources of like a cutting edge game. It's because of that they get to experiment and really kind of surprise you with different mechanics, different genres, different artistic styles and that sort of thing. So while like a retro game and like a modern game, I find them very similar in terms of like design, but obviously, over a longer course of time, an indie game is kind of like, oh, this is where you can get more of that intrigue and that interest out of it, while not maybe having to rewire your brain when playing certain retro games to kind of adapt to the expectations of the time, or playing like just like the new hotness off the presses.
Yeah, and I think we the way we cover games, it usually turns out that most of the stuff that we do is indie.
Mm-hmm.
And we work closely with kind of indie developers and publishers, so that does line up. But it is definitely like a sense of like it applies similarly to the logic of playing a retro game and then playing a modern game. It's similarly that juxtaposition of playing a AAA after an indie or vice versa gives you a lot more of like it's the flavors. You mix the flavors. There's certain things that AAA does that you can never like get in the indie in terms of like, and that line is slowly being more kind of squished and blurred with certain games. But there's certain aspects of a $400 million video game, like perhaps the upcoming Battlefield, that you can't get in a small $30 indie game. But then also those $30, $40 indie games are able to take risks that you simply can't expect. Like you cannot expect a big studio to make or to take as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, at the end of the day, though, like kind of the summation of everything we were trying to say is that like everything in life, moderation is the best. How you want to tackle what game you want to play. If you're watching this as like, hey man, I have so many games in my backlog. How do I get through them? The pillars of what we're trying to say is essentially try to look for recent releases, upcoming releases that maybe you can hype yourself up with, kind of catching up with. And if you sometimes look in the current state of the economy, I totally understand if you can't even pick up some of the like brand new hot off the press games, in which case this is a great time to be like, you're still involved in that kind of, if you're playing the first or second Doom when the Dark Ages is coming out, or you're playing Ghost of Tsushima when Yote is coming out, or any example of that, you're still kind of involved in that, the presence of the activity or the hype around it, without having to dish out $70-$80, which is totally fair. But look for recent releases, and then especially if you have a busy schedule, but in general, if you want to kind of pace yourself out, look at the game length of a game. You can use something like How Long to Beat. You can go to our website. We have a few guides on like the missions of how many missions there are in a video game as well. That can sometimes tell you like, okay, how do I pace this? Sometimes you can look at it and say, oh, I can play one chapter a night, or I'll do half a chapter, so on and so forth. So looking at the game's length will help you as well. But regardless of that, go mix things up. Go play an old game. Go play a new one, and make sure you're kind of alternating so that you're not just getting the same thing. Unless you're like like Nick, going through all of the Streets of Rage or something, where you're kind of going back to back for that experience. That you're getting a little bit of a change so that you're not just kind of inundated with the same thing and then ultimately grow indifferent to it, which I think is the worst thing a game can do to you, is just leave you feeling like nothing, at the end of the day. So with that said, Nick, anything else before
Yeah,
we wrap it
one
up?
thing I would say, we didn't even really touch on this, but you mentioned it briefly there, and it makes a lot of sense to bring it up, is cost and money with all of this. That does have a big factor with that. And I would say if funds are not something that you really have the luxury to go out and spend those games, definitely take a look at like your local game stores, if you have any in your area, and see if there's usually deals to be found in many places like that. Like, and popularity with different consoles will fluctuate prices. Typically, like Nintendo GameCube is a very hot console to collect for, so prices are a little bit pricier on there. But like Xbox 360 and PS3, most most of the great experiences on those consoles you can get for like less than the cost of a sandwich at a restaurant. Like there's, PS4 and Xbox One, like it's still kind of mid-price, but we're getting to that point now where it's like some of those games are going to start dropping in price because there's so much out there and everything. So take a look at your local game store, see if you can maybe grab like a cheap console, and there's plenty of stuff there to give you a ton of playtime for a very relatively, low entry cost. So that's definitely something that you could take a look at as well. Yeah, so that was a good chat there, Sri. I think we tackled quite a broad list of topics there. Me personally, I felt a little scatterbrained in a couple spots, but I think we found the through line through most of that. So if you
had a little nostalgia trip there for a little second,
Yep, exactly.
Can't blame a podcast host for doing that.
Exactly. And if you did enjoy, be sure to give us a rating on wherever you're listening to this, a like on YouTube, that sort of thing. Always goes a
Pirate Bay. If you're pirating this, let us know how the bit rate is.
YouTube to MP3 downloader, give us a rating.
If you're
on
burning
there
CDs of the podcast and then listening to it on your portable CD player, hey,
just grab a Sharpie and write your ranking on the most recent episode. So, but yes, if you did enjoy, help us out in that way. And with all that said, have a good night, a good morning, and a damn good time.
There it is.